Wait, what?
Alrighty, so this is going to be a very interesting match, say. So, both players, I know both players very, very well. Um, Brandon is local to the Ottawa scene, so shout out to the Ottawa boys. Brandon is one of our top and only Dofi players in our Ottawa scene, and then we have Alex, who is a very well known in the the Canadian One Piece community, who plays Whitebeard as well. So this is definitely going to be a very, very strong matchup between these two. Both players are very well versed in the matchup and know not only the lines of play, but also what to do in certain situations, and both know the matchup very well. So it's going to be a very good match.
I'm more astonished at the fact that, as the people on stream are about to see, that the Whitebeard player is playing on a Dolphy mat, which is weird because now he's playing against Dolphy. Kind of crazy, not gonna lie. This is completely random, but I'm not gonna lie. This is an interesting matchup. You don't really see this matchup this often, and it's also good to hear. And it's also going to be a really good matchup for the simple fact that we're going into round 5, so you know that these players are very skilled to have come this far. And I mean, without further ado, I mean, let's go ahead and start it off. I mean, we see that the Dolphy player is going ahead and start off with the perfect turn 1 play, which is Perona, going ahead and arranging the top of your deck so that they can see what the next upcoming turns are going to be. So truthfully, this is a perfect start for Dolphy. So it's going to be interesting to see what turn 1 is going to be for Newgate for sure.
So I've actually talked with Brandon a lot about this Dofi deck because he really likes Dofi into pretty much every meta. It's one of his favorite leaders, and he knows that people were going to be on this Whitebeard, so he actually teched his deck specifically for the Whitebeard matchup. So hopefully we get to see a lot of the tech that Brandon has put into his deck for the Whitebeard. And with the Perona, just being able to stack the top 5 cards of your deck for those Dofi swings that we're going to see here, it's going to be a very, very pivotal for him to get some good swings here. So here we see him attaching 2 Dawn onto the Doflamingo, 7k swing, going to flip the top card, and here we see the Gecko Moria, and here we see one of the techs that he put in his deck specifically for this matchup. The 4 cost 6k, so now he can pressure Whitebeard a little bit harder with those 4 cost 6k swings.
Oh yeah, 100%. This is going to be very interesting, especially if he did tech this specifically for Whitebeard. Considering that 3 of the 5 rounds we've seen so far have been Whitebeard, it was pretty smart to know that, hey, this is going to be a card or a leader that I'm going to be seeing a lot. So let me go ahead and put these in just specifically for that. And this is honestly a beautiful start for Dolphy, having that 7k swing and then being able to play the 6k body. So it's like I'm still putting pressure onto Newgate, which is very beautiful. And then also, hey, I'm playing something that you're going to have to respect next turn as well, while still also having that 7k swing again, possibly to put possibly another body out. So that's the beauty about Dolphy, especially going into Newgate, is that with him being able to activate his ability, he's still putting lethal hit to Newgate, as well as putting more bodies to follow up in the next turn to swing with against Newgate. So this is really good thing about Dolphy, truthfully. So as Alex as his opponent, it's going to be interesting to see how he handles this. And we did see that he did play a vanilla in response as well, possibly to handle that Gecko Moria in the following turn. But it's going to be interesting to see how he tries to handle Dolphy's board swarming ability, which Dolphy is greatly known for, and kind of to see whether or not he's more focused on his board presence or more on going for lethal kind of thing. So honestly, this is just a really good play. Truthfully, it was a good matchup.
Yep, so here we see Brandon going on with that 7k swing, forcing a 2k counter out of his hand. And here we see Brandon doing something very interesting. He swung with 7k to get the 2k counter out of hand. Now, that might seem like to some players as a misplay, but Brandon knows that Whitebeard players run a lot of 2ks, so the less 2ks that the Whitebeard player has, the better for him in the later run. right? Because that's what is pivotal in the later game. All those 2K counters, being able to stop those big number swings later. And here we see off the Doflamingo ability, he was able to get Gecko Moria to basically bring back a warlord from the trash. So he was able to get that Jinbei that he threw in the trash earlier off the counter.
Oh, that's a beautiful thing about that other Gecko Moria, the one with the ability, because you can get basically everything as far as it could be a Mihawk 2K counter, it could be like we just saw that Jinbei. It's just a really good card, especially to be played off of Dolphy because essentially it's a combo piece. You're swinging still lethal to the Newgate, you're playing a body out, and then you're recycling some of your cards or counters in this case. So it's just really good. Honestly, this is a good play thus far, especially since Dolphy played that Perona. So we can go ahead and see the next top five. It's just honestly a beautiful play thus far coming from Dolphy. And for Alex, I'm interested to see what exactly is coming up from Alex's side. Not only because this is just a good matchup that he's against, but also because they're both known as like pivotal players for these leaders that they're picking. And because we're in the round five, you know that they have capabilities to perform in a really good manner. So thus far, I'm kind of interested to see where we go as far as Newgate. And what we see here is the Frankie swinging onto the Gecko Moria body, which Brandon went ahead and let go. But now we're going to see what exactly does he do for the rest of his turn. Does he focus his Newgate onto the other Gecko Moria? Does he play a body out? I mean, what are we going to see here from the Newgate is what I'm excited to see right now.
Yeah, so what you have to do here is you definitely have to slow down the aggression, because Dofi does have that capability, being able to put bodies on board, especially just for free like that. So you want to slow it down and just get rid of those bodies that he puts out. And because they come in rested as well, you would just basically get a free swing. So here we see Rush Luffy coming down. So this is going to be a swing onto life. So Brandon's going to have to deal with this here. Let's see if he counters out of this. And here we see him throw the 2K counter. And then tapping out with a 1 and dropping the 2020 chopper. Good for the blocker here, because now Alex is down to 1 life. And like we mentioned before, this is where Whitebeard likes to kind of sit and chill, right? Because he can just, use the 1K counters or the 2K counters that we mentioned earlier, or he can use the guard points and stuff like that as well. So let's see what Brandon decides to do here. So Brandon is on his, I believe, 7 Dawn turn. So I know he does like to run that Soga King. So he could either try to force out a block here, or just use the Soge King to bounce the chopper to hand. But I think what he's going to do, he's going to swing this 6K onto the Gecko Moria, onto the Rush Luffy to get a card out of hand. And then he's going to play the Soge King to bounce one of these bodies here. So he bounces the Frankie here. So just taking a little bit of tempo off of the Whitebeard and being able to draw 2 cards and discard a card. So he is able to discard 1 card that he won't be using. So you see here, he is using that Jinbei for the 2nd time as discard fodder and was able to get a few 2K counters in hand, which is really, really good.
100%. And I think that was a really good play, not only to get the card out of Alex's hand, but to also return back not the blocker, but instead that 4 costing hand, because it's one of those things where in this case, 2020 can be bounced back to hand easily by a number of things in Dolphy and just in general blue. But to be able to put back essentially a lethal attacker in the follow-up turn is a really, really good play by Brandon. And then also to essentially trust the Jinbei, because he knows it's not necessarily in this matchup. Newgate doesn't play a lot of 3 or less, except like Nami, Tony, things like that, where it's essentially you can just get rid of it with a Piranha swing if it was ever rested. So it's a very good thing that you see him trash the Jinbei and keep those other cards in hand for sure.
All right, and here we see the the ace coming down. So we did see in the last match there how ace is a very pivotal card, being able to neg 3k on two bodies and also give rush as well. So here we see the Newgate swinging in into the Gecko Moria, and Brandon's not going to want to commit counters to that, obviously, so he just lets it go. And here we're going to see a 6k swing onto Doflamingo here. And he's gonna just easily 2k counter out because we know he has it. Here's another 7k swing. Brandon is gonna decide to take this one here easily, and then go from there. So 2 Dawn up, he's gonna throw 2 Dawn, and let's see what he's gonna drop down here. And here we see another Tony Chopper coming down. So no life on the side of Whitebeard, but 2 Tony Choppers. What would be a house here? It's probably if Brandon doesn't have it, but 2-3,000 worlds would be kind of sick. So here we're gonna see the Sogeking swing onto the Luffy, and now we see the 9-cost Mihawk bottoming the ace. So that, I'm telling you, man, Brandon knows this matchup very well. So 9-cost Mihawk just being able to bottom deck that and trying to pressure. So now Brandon is in a very comfy position here because he still has the Sogeking. So if he can play a little bit of a protect the Sogeking game, he'll have some very, very strong swings next turn.
Oh, 100%. And that was just a really, really good move by Brandon to swing to get a card out of Alex's hand and then just go, hey, it really didn't matter. I'm just going to go ahead and bottom deck that. It's just really good. It's just really, really good.
Very, very strong.
And this is one of those turns for Alex. I mean, honestly, he's sitting at a really good, comfortable position. Having, another ace is kind of pivotal. I'm not going to lie. Went ahead and dropped his Sword King and the Mihawk. Just kind of because there's no other good target, truthfully. But like I was saying, Newgate having those 2 Tonys is a really good, comfortable position to be in. And Brandon not playing any blockers is very smart on his half because there's a rush Luffy there. So there's no point in essentially putting that and kind of relying on that. But, I mean, really, Newgate is at a good, comfortable position. And being able to get rid of the Soge King was a good thing to attack with Newgate leader. But now it's going to come down to, what else does he want to do? He has 3 Dawn. He could establish possibly another Tony and keep those 2 Dawn active for counters, whether it's Guard Point, Radical Beam, or the 0 cost. He could keep it up for, a number of things. But I think what we're going to see here is Newgate possibly swing with his ace to leader and possibly just give his opponent something else to attack onto.
All right, here we see the Nami Searcher coming down, looking at the top 5, seeing what he can pull out here. So we see he has a few options here, and like we mentioned, like last round, just Nami being able to grab like any Straw Hat counter, like so a Guard Point or a Red Hawk or something like that, is just really strong. So now Brandon knows this, and it's gonna make the blocking game a little bit harder, the aggressive game a little bit harder, because now Newgate can go up to 9k at bare minimum and go from there, right? Throwing a 2k counter, potentially being at 11 and stuff like that, right? And here we see just another swing there. Brandon just deciding if he wants to take that. And slowly, as this round is going through, we can start to see a little bit of a crowd coming on our side here. Everybody wanting to see how the Dofi deck is doing, because right now Brandon has the Ottawa boys on his back right now. So we definitely need to hope that he is able to pull through on this match here, but he is in a comfy position still, nevertheless, even with the 2 Tony Chopper blockers. So here we're going to see him counter out of the swing here and pass it over to Brandon. Brandon here.
This is going to be a turn. Truthfully, one thing we're possibly going to see, well, for one, starting off with a Perona is actually really, really good, because now that Doffy swing is going to be something that is, how do I say it? It's going to be something that is now intentional, where if he didn't have that Perona, it would have been a kind of blind swing. Do I want to activate the ability? So seeing that we have the Perona start off the turn is very beautiful, because now when he swings with that Doffy, possibly to the Luffy, possibly to the Ace, which I can see one of those 2 being that target for that next attack. It's now going to come with an intention of, okay, now what am I going to play? Am I going to play possibly a blocker Dolphy? Am I going to play another body vanilla or anything along those lines. So that's going to be interesting to see what comes up next. There is what looks like a Gecko Moria there, and a couple other things. But aside from that, having that Mihawk there is going to also be very good. We see that Newgate has the 2 Dawn active, and it's going to be okay. Does he have a Radical Beam? Does he have Guard Point? Uh, we're going to try to get some of those cards out of that hand for sure now, having Mihawk on board. So really, this is going to be another interesting turn. Honestly, this whole match entirely has been quite interesting from both players' sides. And honestly, I do not blame people for wanting to get a crowd around this, because this is a good Dolphy player and this is a good Newgate player, truth be told.
Yep. So we're definitely going to see what's going to come out of here. So Brandon has a lot of thinking to do. He's taking, and like we were mentioning earlier, like when you get to these top tables here, you have to take that extra time and that little bit of time to think about what you want to do here. So here we see Brandon going to attach the 2 Dawn, getting ready for that Dofy swing here. So something's definitely going to be coming out of the top deck for sure. So let's see what happens here.
Oh yeah, 100%. This is about to be a really interesting. We weren't able to see what exactly he put there, but definitely this is going to be something that's going to be quite interesting. And what looks like it's about to be an 8K swing 2 leader.
So 8K swing 2 leader, basically able to get the Gecko Moria. So he's looking for something here. Probably just gonna. Yep, he gets the 2K counter.
Yep. And that's a very smart play. For one, because he puts another body on board, and for two, he just gets another card to counter out with. And we're going to go ahead and see the Mihawk now swing to Newgate. Necessarily, basically saying, hey, I don't really care about your board. I'm not going to lie to you. Whatever you got there, it doesn't matter to me.
Yeah,
and
so
this is
the interesting thing about this. Because that's a 9K swing on to Whitebeard, he has to put at least 2 cards here. Because Guard Point will just bring him up to 9, and then getting another card to be at 10. So Brandon is just putting pressure. Oh, and now we see not only Trafalgar Law, but also a Boa Hancock as well. So he is blocked up right now. But that Rush Luffy is still there. So don't count that out just yet, right? And that oh man, Brandon knows this matchup.
Oh yeah, that's a turn for sure. And it's really smart because yes, that Rush Luffy is there, but it puts the pressure on Alex. Like, hey, are you going to expend your Dawn solely just to get past my blockers? And if so, all right, that's 2 of your Dawn right there. What are you going to do with the rest of it, kind of thing? And, in this case, we're going to most likely see that happen. And this is exactly what's happening, is a 6K swing, actually, which is pretty crazy. Oh, no, that was not a 6K swing. I'm sorry. He attached basically what seems like 5 Dawn.
Yep, so that was an 11K swing onto the Dracula Mihawk there. And that would have been 2 cards that had to come out of Brandon's hand. And he can't afford that at this point in time. So he was just like, yeah, you can have it there, brother.
Yeah, 100%. And that was very smart because it's like, hey, now you're not going to use your blockers 100%. That's for certain. But now also, hey, you're going to get rid of this or you're going to counter out. And in this case, Brandon didn't. Then we see the 7K swing onto Dolphy, which was countered out as well. And now we see another Rush Luffy, no Dawn attached, but definitely another, a body that has to be respected once again. And in this case, Law was used to block that attack. And we're passing it back to Brandon. Now, in Brandon's situation, he has 2 life, but now he's facing 4 lethal hits. So in this case, it's one of those things, do you want to focus on getting rid of board presence? And if so, how are you going to go about doing it now that Newgate still has those 2 Tonys, but he added now another unblockable Luffy? So it's one of these really tough situational choices that Brandon has to make, but because he's an experienced player and he specifically built his deck around Newgate, I'm really interested to see where he goes next with this. It seems like he's, organizing his Dawn out, doing the math, quick math, but it's going to be a really interesting turn right here for sure.
But something you have to be aware here is that Alex has no Dawn available. So a lot of the event cards that Newgate players would use to pad their life, like the guard points and stuff like that, he doesn't have access to those. So if Brandon can get rid of one of these Tony Chopper blockers and just push damage, he could potentially go for game here. So that's why you see Brandon mathing out here. So here we're going to see a big swing here off of this Gecko Moria. That's an 8K swing. So that's at least 2 cards out of Alex's hand for game here. So you're more than likely either going to see those 2 cards drop, or a Tony Chopper blocker is going to be going down. So that's another 2K. So that is 9K. So a Thatch and a Luffy. And Brandon's just making sure he has the numbers here to see if he can actually push for game. So
that's very smart to swing with that AK. Only because in the case of, let's say it wasn't the 2 cards that were being put out of hand, like you said, a Tony can happen. There's also that, again, that 0 cost event that we haven't seen yet, shockingly, today. Because I mean, it gets you 3K. It's essentially just a guard point, just with the cost of discarding something else. So that's something else that we could have seen. And I think that's why Brandon is not necessarily hesitant, but he's making very particularly sure that he's using his Don correctly to get around if that's a possibility. So it's very beautiful that we see an 8K swing, essentially to get those 2 cards, but possibly if it's an event that was the 0 cost, it would be getting 2 cards out as well. So it's very smart decisions that Brandon is making here. And I think we're about to see another 8K swing. Now, if we see him use his ability, it's going to be something really interesting because he does know what the next card is. And yeah, we're seeing that. We're seeing another Gecko Moria bring back a Law. So now we're going to possibly see the Law being played in response. And Newgate discards, not a discard, sorry, rather uses one of those Tonys. So now there's only 1 more left.
Here we see another 6K swing here. Boa being able to draw a card. And we do know that I think what Brandon was trying to decide here, because Brandon does have a 3K Worlds in his hand. So he was wondering if he could have pressed the game by getting rid of with the 3K Worlds, and Brandon just realizing that he only had 4 characters, being a little bit hasty there, but he was going to slam the 2 blocker laws on board. So the 2 blocker laws does prevent lethal here, for sure, but those Rush Luffys are still a thing, so he does have to worry about those. Maybe if a Marco gets dropped here, Marco would clear one of the blockers, and then Brandon would be looking down the barrel of 3 potential swings here that he would have to deal with in that regard. But that's still 2 more cards. So he does have a few. He has 2 cards in hand, so we do know he has a 2K counter. So I believe he has a 2K counter and a 3K Worlds in hand. So here we see Alex just checking inside of his what's it called? Inside of the trash here, just to see what is in trash right now, to see if he could potentially press for game here. And as it said in Twitch chat, yeah, we do know he has a 2K counter in hand and a 3K World. So we're going to see the life hits are going to be very pivotal here.
100%.
And Alex has to basically swing correctly here with the right numbers. So Whitebeard currently, it looks like he has 2 cards in hand. 2 cards or 1 card in hand.
And I see that he's setting aside 5 Dawn. So it could be possible that one of those cards is a Marco. If so, it's really going to come down to, like you said, those cards in life. Because granted, Brandon has no active Dawn, but those triggers in blue sometimes are just really, really, really brutal.
Yeah.
So any of those returns back one of those cards or essentially boost up, it's going to be quite a game ender.
So excuse me here, but let me give a little bit of clairvoyance here. We still haven't seen any Red Hawks yet. So if he swings with Ace and then a Red Rock gets hit out of life, he can bottom deck one of those Luffys, and then we would be in a different ballgame, because now that's 1 less swing. And now he has the 2 blockers, which would be kind of huge for Brandon here. So, or it could be double Red Hawk. Double Red Hawk would also be quite insane. So, definitely a lot of stuff that could come out of life there. And Red Rock is 4 or less?
Yes, I
see. Okay, you see?
Which is actually good, honestly, because in this case, essentially, if Alex does not end this in this turn, I can very much see Dolphy winning this, truth be told, because in this case, Alex kind of has to expend all his Don in this to get it just the right amount going. And even then, like this is the turn for this matchup to decide the game here. Because if Alex does the math right, the triggers in Brandon's life aren't there. This was going to be, Newgate side. But in the other case, if it's the opposite and Brandon has some good counters or rather triggers in life, then this could honestly be a follow-up turn for Dolphy to win here. So this is going to be an interesting play. And as we saw Newgate swing with ace, which was blocked by the law. Now we're seeing Newgate swing with leader, which possibly could be blocked by law as well. This is really interesting, truth be told.
Yeah. So here, because Brandon's at 2 life, I think can he afford to take the swing here off of this leader swing? Because there's still the threat of just being able to go Dawn to prevent the blocker and then rush Luffy.
100%. And I think this was a smart move, just block with law, because I mean those blockers aren't going to be used for any other hits this turn, especially with those Luffys there. So now it's kind of one of those things where even if he did have Marco, now they're kind of pointless. But really, I don't see really any other thing that could be done here except for swing with some Dawn attached to Luffy, swing with some Dawn attached to the other Luffy, and then keep some Dawn active for events possibly in hand to be on the protective side. Or I mean, Alex may even have another Tony. We've only seen 2 so far. It is possible he has a set of 4 in here. This is interesting. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, it's these latter turns here, but here we only seen one Dawn attached to the Luffy. So just going for a 7K swing here. So forcing Dolphy to block, take 2 cards out of here is very, very strong. I mean, 7K swings are very, very annoying. So Brandon counting up how much Dawn here. So that 5 cost could be into another rush Luffy and then 2 Dawn onto that. That's an 8K swing that Brandon would have to deal with here. But you see, okay, so Alex is, just swung into the Boa Hancock here, and then he's swinging into the Gecko Moria. So it looks like he can't press here. And what do we see coming down here? Another wanted Luffy. So there we swing, clear it, attempting to clear. Yeah, so he just clears board here. So on the turn of Brandon, 1 Dawn up for Alex, 3,000 whirls, and then he's just going to swing 11K, force opponent to have it. Does opponent have it? Start counting the cards.
That's a move right there. That is a move.
There's a Radical Beam. And then, Brandon does get it. So Ottawa boys end up taking that. Very well played by both. And Brandon, I tell you, man, he knows this matchup 100%. Just 1K off. I think it was 1K, 2K off, sorry. But yeah, no, man, Brandon ended up taking that pretty nicely. And shout outs to Alex as well, putting on the pressure as the Whitebeard player and being at 1 life for so long, right? So
yeah, that was definitely a move for sure. Dolphy coming out on top in this matchup this was really just a beautiful matchup on both players have for sure.
Yeah.
Because of just the way they were able to play around each other and in Brandon's case, being a board of 2 rush Luffy and ace, some players or more inexperienced players would be like, okay, let me go for board. But in this case, Brandon was like, no, I don't care about that. I want cards out of hand. And like just moves such as that are very interesting to see, and it kind of teaches other players who go, hey, I want to play Dolphy. How do I go about going against Newgate? These are matchups that essentially are exceptionally beautiful to see, especially from both players aside for one, but there's a few like, hey, this is, what you should do more in this situation than the alternative, So this is honestly kudos to both players. This is a beautiful match.
Yeah, and like I said in the early game there, you see Brandon was pressuring life total early, forcing those 2K counters out of hand. And that was key in this matchup, because if there was just a few more 2K counters, it would have been a little bit more rougher on the side of Brandon. But Brandon just playing it very, very well and able to take that round 5 victory, going 5-0 right now at the halfway point of today. So kudos to him, and shout outs to Alex as well for being 4-1 right now. But it's not out for him yet. He still can come back on the clutch side and deal with it. But that is round 5, ladies and gentlemen. We have a little bit of time left here, so we're going to take a little bit of a break, but we're coming back for round 6. Hopefully we can get some more great One Piece, because these past few matches have been really, really good. Very strong players out here in Niagara today. So we'll be right back. We'll take a little short break, and we'll get hydrated. Make sure you get hydrated. I need to go hydrate myself. So we'll take a little break now, and we'll be back with you in a little bit.